Welcome to the Tending Our Nets podcast, where we believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ. We encourage everyone to learn more. We work to equip believers to share their faith with everyone they know.
Welcome to the Tending Our Nets podcast. My name is Joshua Sherman, and I am your host here. Last time, we looked at the gospel, and we looked at it as part of the declaration and the bringing about of the victory of God. We looked at that specifically in this moment when Jesus is born and the angels start rejoicing. That it's not just a choir of angels or a lot of angels, but actually the heavenly army of angels rejoicing in the sky. This was essentially D-Day. Jesus was born, and he was coming to reclaim the earth and to claim full sovereignty over it. So that's what we looked at last time. This time I want to look at a different moment in Jesus' life that's obviously very consequential, very significant for us. And that, of course, is Jesus' death at the cross. This, in many ways can look like a defeat, and it did. To his disciples, it did to the people that crucified him, it did to the powers that tried to orchestrate this happening. But it was in this very moment that he actually attained victory. So here again, we have the victory of God, the kingship of Jesus being manifest, being made known through moments in Jesus' life. In particular, what we have at the cross is actually a look at Jesus' coronation. So there's this pattern that you can trace through the Old Testament with Israelite kings, where they are first anointed, and then they must prove their worthiness, and then at some point later they are coronated. You see this with Saul, where he's anointed, and then God tells him he needs to go deal with the Philistines, and instead he goes and deals with a different group of people. He's not listening to God. He's not actually proving his worthiness. He's actually disproving it. He's still coronated, but it's essentially as the king of the people, not as the king that God desires to have in place. So you definitely get a sense that he is not the one that God has chosen for this position. That, of course, leaves the path open for David to eventually become king. After he is anointed, we see him go out, and he actually proves his worthiness by killing Goliath, something that Saul would not do or would not try to do himself. And then, of course, after all of the drama with Saul is over, we have David's coronation. With Jesus, we have something similar. He is anointed at his baptism. He then overcomes temptation because the Spirit kind of drives him out into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan. He overcomes that. He proves his worthiness. And then, of course, later on in his life, at the end of his earthly life, before he's resurrected and shows up again for a while and then ascends to the heavens, he's coronated at the cross. This is both a mock coronation and it's an ironic one because the people around him that are yelling, "Crucify," the leaders that want him dead, the soldiers that are involved in carrying this out, the powers that want to see him killed, they all are mocking him. You see this with the crown of thorns that he has. You see this with the robe that's placed on him. These are actually elements, essentially, of the coronation of a Caesar. And Mark's gospel actually kind of takes us through that exact order. And so we have a number of things going on there that, again, pit Jesus against Caesar, again, show us that people are mocking him, that they are basically saying, this guy's a pretender. He's the king of the Jews. There's a sign above his head that says that. And, of course, that's meant to mock him as well, and also meant as a warning to people that this is what happens when you try to rise up as a king of the Jews against Rome, right? So we have him pitted against Caesar. We have this mock coronation. And yet, at the end of the day, what do we see? We see the thief on the cross. While all these people are mocking him, he says, "Today when you come into your kingdom, remember me." We have the centurion that looks upon him when he dies and says, "Surely this man was a son of God," right? So we have all of these elements of him being mocked, of this being just meant to be show, meant to be ridicule. And yet, in reality, this is the moment when he dies on the cross where evil has forever lost. Because this is where Jesus grasps victory. This is where he then goes down and defeats the devil and takes the power of death from him and redeems his people. So this coronation is both mock and very, very real. And I love that kind of dual element to that, the way that the gospel writers really highlight these things for us. If you want to dig into this a bit more, I've linked in the show notes to a podcast episode with Dr. Michael Heiser going through this pattern of anointing, proving worthiness, and coronation, and also the Bema podcast talking about coronation of Jesus on the cross as a parallel, as a kind of almost a reversal of the coronation of a Caesar. So those are the things I would definitely recommend checking out, and I have those in the show notes. Thank you for joining us. Next time, we're going to be getting into the fact that the kingdom is already here, and yet it's not here in its fullness. We're going to talk about what that looks like, what that means, and kind of what we should expect to see in this time while we are awaiting the parousia, the second coming of Christ. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, write reviews, share this with your friends. We want to make sure that we can get this out to help people, help Christians learn to talk about the gospel so that they can share the gospel effectively with everyone they know. God bless.
You've been listening to the Tending Our Nets podcast. If you like what you hear, check us out at the Raven Creek Social Club and by searching for us on social media via Tending Our Nets.
Raise us up to bear your